Welcome to a journey through the dusty, oil-stained corridors of automotive history that many manufacturers would rather you forget. When we talk about classic pickup trucks, our minds immediately drift to the golden icons. The roaring Ford F-100s, the sleek Chevrolet C10S, or the indestructible early Toyotas. These were the machines that built nations, defined generations, and earned their spots in the pantheon of great design. However, for every masterpiece that rolled off the assembly line, there was a counterpart that missed the mark so spectacularly it left enthusiasts and critics alike scratching their heads in pure disbelief. Today, we are not celebrating the legends. Instead, we are shining a cold, unforgiving light on the misfits of the truck world. We are talking about the abominable, the bizarre, and the downright ugly. These are the vintage pickups that defied logic, challenged the very definition of aesthetics, and proved that sometimes even the most prestigious engineering teams can have a very, very bad day at the office. Some of these vehicles were the victims of desperate corporate cost-cutting. Others were experimental designs that looked better on a cocktail napkin than they did in steel, and a few were simply identity crises on four wheels. Trucks that didn't know if they wanted to be luxury sedans, economy hatchbacks, or rugged workhorses. You might find yourself asking, how did these actually get approved for production? Or, who was the target audience for a truck that looks like a motorized shipping crate? From the strange proportions of the post-war era to the misguided plastic-heavy experiments of the 70s and 80s, these 20 vehicles represent the weirdest chapters in trucking history. They are the ghosts of the automotive industry, trucks that have largely been scrubbed from the official brochures and forgotten by the general public. But today, we are bringing them back from oblivion. Strap in as we count down 20 abominable old pickup trucks that time, and perhaps your memory, mercifully tried to erase. 1. The Subaru Brat Bi-Drive Recreational All-Terrain Transporter. The Subaru Brat is the ultimate symbol of a loophole vehicle gone wrong. In the late 1970s, to avoid the chicken tax, a 25% tariff on imported light trucks, Subaru made a decision that was as dangerous as it was ugly. They bolted two rear-facing plastic seats into the cargo bed. This allowed the Brat to be classified as a passenger car, dropping the tax to 10%. From a design perspective, it looked like a small station wagon that had its roof crudely hacked off. The sight of passengers sitting in the bed, clutching joy grip handles while facing the headlights of following traffic, was truly bizarre. It was a vehicle that sacrificed safety and aesthetics for a tax break, earning its place as an abominable classic. 2. The Dodge Rampage. Introduced in 1982, the Dodge Rampage was a front-wheel drive subcompact pickup that attempted to blend the sportiness of a coupe with the utility of a truck. Built on the same platform as the Dodge Omni, it looked like a sports car that had been stretched on a rack until it snapped. The front end was aggressive and sleek, but it led into a tiny, shallow bed that felt completely disconnected from the rest of the body. Because it was front-wheel drive, putting actual weight in the bed would lift the front wheels, making steering nearly impossible. It was a truck that couldn't handle truck work, wrapped in a design that looked like a poorly executed garage project. 3. The Mazda Repu, rotary engine pickup. Mazda's obsession with the Wankel engine led to the creation of the Repu in 1974. It was the world's first and only rotary-powered pickup. While technically impressive, it was a conceptual nightmare. Trucks need low-end torque for hauling, but rotary engines only produce power at high RPMs. To signify its special engine, Mazda gave it flared fenders and round taillights that looked like they belonged on a sports car, not a utility vehicle. The high-pitched scream of a rotary engine coming from a pickup truck was a jarring experience that confused buyers and left the Repu as a strange, thirsty, and loud footnote in history. 4. The Studebaker Champ. By 1960, Studebaker was in deep financial trouble. In a desperate move, they took the front half of the Studebaker Lark, a compact passenger car, and grafted it onto an old truck chassis from the late 1940s. The result was a visual catastrophe. The smooth, modern lines of the car's cabin clashed violently with the rugged, boxy cargo bed. Because the car body was narrower than the truck frame, the proportions were completely off, making the Champ look like a Frankenstein's monster of automotive parts. It was a compromise that satisfied nobody and proved that you can't just mix car and truck parts at random. 5. The Ford Durango, not to be confused with the later Dodge SUV. The Ford Durango was a limited production car-truck hybrid based on the Ford Fairmont Futura. It was a collaboration that looked exactly like what it was. A chopped-up sedan with a fiberglass bed dropped into the back. The thick B-pillar and the awkwardly vertical rear window made the truck look heavy and unbalanced. It lacked the integrated style of the Ford Ranchero, looking instead like a budget conversion that hadn't been fully thought through. It had the boring face of a 1980s commuter car and the back of a toy truck, a combination that was quickly forgotten by the public. 6. The Chevrolet Love light utility vehicle. In the early 1970s, Chevrolet was desperate to compete with the rising tide of small Japanese pickups. Their solution was to rebadge the Isuzu Faster as the Chevrolet Love. While it served a purpose, its proportions were spindly and lacked any of the muscle associated with the Chevy brand. The truck featured a tiny, cramped cabin with massive glass windows that made the driver look disproportionately large, like a giant sitting in a toy car. The narrow tires and thin body panels gave it a fragile appearance, making it look more like a motorized garden cart than a dependable workhorse. It was a vehicle that felt physically overwhelmed by its own cargo bed, a shrinking violet in a world of automotive titans. 7. The Plymouth Arrow truck. Part of the late 70s wave of captive imports, the Plymouth Arrow was essentially a Mitsubishi Forte with a different badge. The design was a chaotic mess of late-century aesthetics. It featured an incredibly short wheelbase that made the truck look stubby, and the cabin was strangely upright, giving it the silhouette of a toaster on wheels. To hide its awkward proportions, Plymouth covered it in loud, garish decals and stripes that only served to highlight its toy-like stature. It lacked any sense of flow, with a front grille that looked like a piece of cheap plastic kitchenware. It was a truck that seemed to be constantly leaning forward, lacking the grounded, stable stance required of a serious utility vehicle. 8. The Volkswagen Rabbit pickup. Caddy. The Volkswagen Rabbit pickup is the perfect example of what happens when you stretch a subcompact car beyond its limits. Based on the Rabbit Golf hatchback, VW engineers literally pulled the chassis apart to fit a truck bed. The result was a vehicle that looked like it was sagging in the middle. From the front, it was a friendly, rounded commuter car. From the back, it was a flat, boxy utility bed. The two halves never felt like they belonged to the same machine. Because it sat so low to the ground on tiny wheels, any load in the back made the truck look like it was about to scrape the pavement. It was an awkward, elongated hybrid that looked less like a truck and more like a car with a birth defect. 9. The Datsun 620, the bullet side. The Datsun 620 attempted to bring styling to the compact truck market with its famous bullet side crease. However, this design choice made the truck's proportions look melted and distorted. The hood dipped sharply toward the front, which, combined with the quad-round headlights, gave it a pained, squinting expression. The cabin was oddly low-slung, while the bed sat relatively high, creating an unintentional rake that made the vehicle look like it was constantly braking hard. The mix of sharp character lines and soft, rounded corners created a visual disharmony that was hard to ignore. It was a truck that tried to be aerodynamic but ended up just looking confused. 10. The International Harvester. Travelette. International Harvester was known for farm equipment, and the Travelette looked like it was designed using only a ruler and a T-square. As one of the first crew cabs, it had the right idea but the wrong proportions. It was a massive, hulking box that lacked any stylistic refinement. The doors were perfectly rectangular, the hood was a flat slab of iron, and the cabin was so tall and narrow that it looked like a structural pillar. There was zero attempt at streamlining. It had the aerodynamic profile of a brick wall. It was so utilitarian that it felt alien in a residential setting. A giant, clunky industrial tool that happened to have 4 doors and a bed. 11. The Jeep Comanche MJ. The Jeep Comanche is a classic example of a Frankenstein concept. Released in the mid-80s, Jeep tried to turn the unibody Cherokee SUV into a body-on-frame pickup. The result was a visual and structural mismatch. From the front, it had the iconic, rugged look of a Jeep, but from the B-pillar back, it looked like a flat, generic bed had been haphazardly glued on. The transition was so abrupt that it lacked any design continuity. Because the Cherokee's design was intended to be a closed wagon, removing the rear half left the Comanche looking skeletal and incomplete, as if it were a specialized industrial vehicle rather than a consumer truck meant for the open road. 12. The Suzuki Equator. The Suzuki Equator represents a total failure of brand identity. Suzuki, famous for small, nimble off-roaders like the Samurai, decided to enter the mid-size truck market by simply slapping their badge on a Nissan Frontier. There was zero Suzuki DNA in the vehicle. The only design change was a massive, hideous chrome grille that looked like a cheap aftermarket part. It was a conceptual disaster because it offered nothing new to the market. It was a ghost of a truck that didn't know who it was for. Even Suzuki fans were confused, and the general public ignored it entirely, leading to its status as one of the most forgettable and uninspired badge engineering projects in history. 13. The Powell Sport Wagon. The Powell Sport Wagon is perhaps the most bizarre lifestyle truck ever conceived. Built in the 1950s using refurbished chassis from 1941 Plymouths found in scrap yards, it was a truck made of recycled parts before that was a trend. The concept was to provide a cheap, utilitarian vehicle for fishermen and campers, but the execution was primitive. It was basically a giant metal box with zero curves. Its most innovative feature was a long tube built into the rear fender to hold fishing poles, which made the side of the truck look like it had a structural pipe protruding from it. It looked like a motorized shipping crate and lacked any of the post-war style that made 1950s trucks so iconic. 14. The Ford Courier, first generation. Before the Ranger, Ford's compact truck was the Courier, a rebadged Mazda. The conceptual failure here was Ford's attempt to Americanize a delicate Japanese design. They took a tiny, narrow truck and forced a massive, heavy-handed Ford grille onto its face. The result was a vehicle that looked like a child wearing their father's oversized suit. The wheels were tucked deep inside the wells, making it look top-heavy and fragile. It lacked the built Ford tough personality, appearing instead like a temporary, low-budget solution to a market shift that Ford wasn't prepared for. 15. The GMC Caballero. The GMC Caballero was the luxury twin of the Chevrolet El Camino, but it suffered from a massive identity crisis. GMC tried to market it as a professional-grade gentleman's truck, but the concept made no sense. It was often draped in fake wood grain paneling and plush velour interiors that were completely impractical for a vehicle with an open bed. The design was a sea of beige and square lines that looked dated the moment it left the factory. It wasn't rugged enough for work and wasn't prestigious enough for a night out. It was a conceptual middle ground that satisfied no one, leaving it as a boring, beige footnote in the history of car-truck hybrids. 16. The Hudson pickup. Hudson was known for its sleek, step-down luxury sedans that dominated NASCAR in the early 1950s. However, their pickup was an aesthetic disaster. To save money, Hudson simply took the front half of their high-end Commodore sedan and bolted a utilitarian cargo box onto the back. The result was a vehicle that looked like a limousine carrying a wooden crate. The elegant, rounded chrome grille and streamlined hood clashed violently with the sharp, vertical lines of the truck bed. It was too expensive to be a workhorse and too strange to be a luxury item, leaving it as a rare but undeniably awkward relic of a brand that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. 17. The Willys Jeep truck. While the original Jeep is a masterpiece of military utility, the civilian Willys Jeep truck was a lesson in brutalism gone wrong. Designed to be easy to manufacture, the front end looked like it had been flattened by a hydraulic press. The nose was incredibly short, and the headlights were squeezed together, giving the truck a look of permanent, wide-eyed shock. The cabin was tall, narrow, and looked like a metal phone booth sitting on a chassis. Because the fenders were separate from the body and featured sharp, jagged edges, there was zero visual flow. It was a rugged machine, certainly, but its scarecrow proportions ensured it would never be considered a beauty of the road. 18. The Toyota Stout. Before Toyota mastered the American market with the Hilux, they sent us the Stout. It was a visual mess. The Stout featured quad-stacked headlights that gave it a four-eyed appearance, more like a confused insect than a truck. The hood was covered in unnecessary vents and weird indentations, while the body sat low and wide on tiny wheels. The proportions were so unappealing that it looked like a caricature of a truck. It was robust, yes, but its ugly duckling status was so pronounced that Toyota sold very few in the West. It stands today as a reminder that even the most successful companies had some very rough starts. 19. The Chevrolet Corvair 95 Rampside. The Rampside was a technological marvel with a fatal design flaw. Because the Corvair engine was in the rear, the truck bed had a massive hump at the back to cover the powertrain. To make it usable, Chevy added a fold-down ramp on the side of the truck. While innovative, it looked bizarre. Without an engine in the front, the nose was a flat, featureless wall of metal that lacked a mouth or personality. The side ramp created a huge, ugly seam in the bodywork that ruined the truck's lines. It was a mechanical oddity that looked more like a piece of airport ground equipment than a personal pickup, leading to its quick disappearance from the market. 20. The Crosley pickup. Powell Crosley Jr. believed Americans wanted tiny cars, and he applied that logic to the Crosley pickup. This was a truck that could be bullied by a large dog. It sat on wheels that looked like they belonged on a lawnmower, and the cabin was so narrow that two passengers had to overlap their shoulders just to fit. Its face was a tiny slit for a grille with two bug-eyed lamps, making it look like a sad, metallic beetle. It lacked the power to haul and the presence to be safe on the highway. It was a toy truck in a world that demanded heavy-duty power, proving that being cute and being a truck are often mutually exclusive. And there you have it, 20 of the most abominable, confusing, and downright bizarre pickup trucks to ever grace the asphalt. Looking back at these machines, it's easy to judge the designers and engineers who brought them to life. However, these vehicles serve as a fascinating reminder of the trial and error that defines the automotive industry. They were born out of necessity, desperation, or sometimes just a wild ambition to do something that had never been done before. While they might have lacked the beauty of a classic F-150 or the grace of a modern Silverado, they paved the way for the refined, powerful, and aesthetically pleasing trucks we drive today. Each of these misfits tells a story, whether it's the Subaru Brat's clever tax-dodging seats or the Mazda Ripu's high-screaming rotary experiment. They represent a time when manufacturers weren't afraid to take risks, even if those risks resulted in a vehicle that only a mother or a very dedicated collector could love. Most of these trucks have been reclaimed by the earth or tucked away in the back of old barns, but they remain an essential part of the tapestry of car culture. We want to hear from you now. Did we miss a truck that you think is even more abominable than the ones on this list? Or perhaps you're one of the few who actually owned and loved one of these forgotten relics? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the weird side of truck history, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more automotive deep dives. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one as we continue to explore the icons and the oddities of the road.